Antonio Oteiza began as a Catholic missionary, then chose sculpture and painting because he believed images could carry preaching further than sermons. He became a Capuchin novice in Bilbao in 1945 and was ordained a priest in Madrid in 1953. His missions took him through Cuba, Colombia, Venezuela, Brazil, and the Andes of Peru. At 30, in Venezuela, he wanted to mark 300 years of Capuchin work with a sculpture. When no artist was available, he shaped the clay himself. That experience redirected his vocation. In 1961, Oteiza asked his superiors for permission to focus on art, then established a workshop at a Capuchin convent in Madrid. His religious images were not intended merely to be beautiful. Saint Joseph and the Good Samaritan were designed for expressive impact, intensifying messages of welcome and compassion. Expression made each sculpture part of preaching, not merely a beautiful object. In 1937, a fascist arch in Libya linked Mussolini to Augustus. Its Roman design carried a Latin quotation originally praising Rome's first emperor. The Arch of the Philaeni stood where Italian Tripolitania and Cyrenaica had just been united as Italian Libya. It also marked the Litorania, the first paved road connecting eastern and western Libya. Architect Florestano di Fausto wrapped the 31-meter arch in 350 tons of travertine imported from Tivoli. Classical Mediterranean motifs surrounded a Latin line from Horace's Carmen Saeculare, a poem written in praise of Augustus and Rome. Its reliefs placed Mussolini saluting King Victor Emmanuel III beside soldiers, agriculture, and images of Rome. The monument turned a road project into a visual claim that fascist rule continued imperial tradition. The arch survived World War II, but its political meaning did not last. Muammar Gaddafi's government demolished it in the early 1970s, leaving the Roman message without its monument. A family marriage dispute in Nicaragua began with shootings and the arrest of German consul Christian Moritz Eisenstück. 2 years later, 6 imperial German warships stood off Nicaragua. The conflict involved Eisenstück's brother Paul and Paul's stepdaughter, whose marriage to Nicaraguan Francisco Leal had broken down. A private family dispute had drawn a diplomat into a case handled by local authorities. After the shootings, legal proceedings stalled. German Foreign Minister Bernhard Ernst von Bülow demanded prosecution, a $30,000 indemnity, and a salute to the German flag. Germany sought diplomatic backing from Britain and the United States, and both governments sided with Germany. In 1878, 6 warships reached Corinto and Grey Town, where sailors came ashore. On 31 March 1878, Nicaragua agreed to pay the indemnity and salute the German flag. A family dispute had ended with a government meeting demands backed by a foreign fleet. George Lincoln was not the public face of World War II's ending. He was an army strategist. He helped draft the document Japan signed to surrender in 1945. Lincoln graduated 4th in his 1929 West Point class and later studied at Oxford as a Rhodes Scholar. From 1941–42, he served as executive officer of a combat engineering unit in Europe. In spring 1943, he entered the Army's Strategy and Policy Group in Washington. As deputy chief, he became General George C. Marshall's close advisor and principal strategic planner. He helped plan campaigns in Europe and Asia, connecting military strategy with logistical demands. The document was the Japanese instrument of surrender. Lincoln assisted in drafting it, and Japan signed it on September 2, 1945. Marshall later awarded Lincoln the Distinguished Service Medal for planning and negotiating worldwide military operations and reconciling the war's logistical and strategic factors. In 1903, a meeting of African American leaders over Booker T. Washington's Atlanta Compromise erupted into fistfights, not just formal debate. Washington's strategy emphasized education, entrepreneurship, and self-help. He argued that economic strength should come before direct challenges to Jim Crow segregation and voter disenfranchisement. He believed cooperation with supportive white leaders could create room for black institutions to grow, especially in the segregated South. Opponents, including W.E.B. Du Bois and other activists in the North, demanded organized political change. They wanted direct challenges to segregation and the loss of voting rights. Washington was the era's dominant African-American leader, backed by black middle-class leaders, churches, philanthropists, and politicians. The disagreement divided influential black leaders. They differed over whether progress meant building power first or confronting discriminatory laws immediately. So the meeting's fists were not a random disruption. They were a concrete sign that strategy had become an internal political struggle, with Washington's conciliatory approach facing activists who demanded organized political resistance. Johannes Hevelius studied the moon, served Gdansk as counselor and mayor, and rented space beneath its old town hall for beer he brewed. The old town hall was a 16th-century Mannerist building, a late Renaissance style influenced by Dutch architecture. From 1595 to 1793, it housed the old town's local government. Hevelius was linked to the hall as both a city councillor and mayor, not merely as someone passing through. The practical arrangement was simple. Hevelius rented the building's large basements. They stored the beers he brewed, giving his brewing operation a place beneath city offices. After 1793, the hall stopped serving its original role. It later housed a city court, then government offices, before becoming today's Baltic Center of Culture. The same basement level therefore belongs to a cultural venue, but its documented earlier use was beer storage. Those basement rooms once stored beer brewed by the astronomer who studied the moon. The first Portuguese translation of Homer's Odyssey was reportedly harder to read than the original Greek text it was meant to explain. That sounds backwards, but Homeric Greek is inaccessible to most modern readers. For the Odyssey, translation is not optional, it is the bridge to the poem. A translator can follow the original wording or prioritize the poem's overall effect and cultural context. Form matters too. Prose, rhyme, free verse, and blank verse all change the reading experience. The Portuguese version belongs to a long chain of Odyssey translations and reinterpretations in English, German, French, Spanish, and Romanian. Each language carries the poem through different literary choices. So translation does not simply open a transparent window onto one fixed original. It can become a new interpretation, and in this reported case, a doorway that proved harder to pass through. An exiled Greek composer, Mikis Theodorakis, credited with more than 1,000 works, worked with Chilean poet Pablo Neruda on Canto General in Paris. Greece's 1967 junta band playing and even listening to Theodorakis' music. After arrest and deportation, he entered Parisian exile on 13 April 1970, initially arriving in France with tuberculosis. In 1971, President Salvador Allende invited him to Chile. In Valparaiso, Theodorakis heard young people present part of Neruda's work and promised to give Chile his musical opinion on Canto General. Back in Paris, he rehearsed the musicalization of Canto General and met Neruda in 1972. Neruda was impressed and asked him to include poems such as Lautaro and A Emiliano Zapata. The documented project, listed as Canto General from 1971 to 1982, linked Greek music with Chilean poetry. Exile became a working space where political expression crossed borders between two traditions.